The royal garden of the empire was not a place where mistakes were allowed to happen. It was a sacred stretch of glowing silver flowers, floating pollen lights, and vines that whispered when anyone walked close. For thousands of years, only one bloodline was permitted to step inside: the royal family of Queen, ruler of the strongest empire in that quadrant of the stars. No outsider had ever touched those flowers. No foreign feet had ever touched that soil. That was why, on that strange and quiet evening, the Queen stopped breathing for a moment when she looked down from her balcony and saw something that should have been impossible. A human stood in the middle of the garden. At first, she thought her eyes were tricking her. Maybe the twilight light had created an illusion. Maybe her tired mind was imagining things. But when she leaned closer, when her golden eyes sharpened, she felt her heart tighten. It was truly a human. A soft, fragile creature from a distant and unpredictable species. And next to him stood her daughter, Princess Lyra. The two of them were walking between the silver flowers, as if nothing in the world was wrong. The Queen's fingers curled around the balcony railing. Her breath grew cold. She was not a woman who allowed emotions to show, not even before her own council. But this sight, it pierced through her armor. Anger rose first, then confusion, then fear, a feeling she almost never admitted even to herself. Why was her daughter alone with a human? Why was he allowed in the garden? And why did she see a smile on Lyra's face? Lyra never smiled easily. She carried the pressure of the empire on her shoulders. She walked carefully, spoke carefully, lived carefully. Yet here she was, talking to a stranger from a species known for chaos, unpredictability, and wild emotion. The Queen stepped back from the balcony. No, this needed answers. This needed control. This needed her. She descended the stairs with long, angry steps. Each footstep echoed through the stone corridor. Guards straightened themselves as she passed, but she ignored them. Her focus was on the garden, on her daughter, on the human boy who had no right to be anywhere near the royal grounds. Princess Lyra, standing among the glowing silver blossoms, did not know her mother was approaching. She had her hands clasped behind her back, her posture calm. But her eyes, her soft violet eyes, were full of a gentleness the Queen had not seen in years. The human boy walked beside her with careful steps, as if he feared harming the delicate petals. He looked exhausted, worn from his time in the Empire. His ship had crashed weeks ago, drifting through the void until a patrol pulled him from the wreckage. Most humans would have been fearful, loud, demanding, but had been quiet, respectful, watching everything with tired but hopeful eyes. Lyra had taken interest in him for reasons she had not explained. She visited him, spoke to him, walked with him. Bit by bit, she let down the barriers she kept so tightly closed. It was something the Queen had noticed, but she never imagined it would lead her daughter to bring a human into the forbidden garden. The Queen entered through the archway, her presence cold and commanding. The flowers dimmed slightly, reacting to her intense energy. Lyra turned at the sound of approaching footsteps and felt her throat tighten. "Mother," her voice trembled. Looked up and instantly stepped back, his face pale. He had heard enough stories from other species to know the Queen was not someone to take lightly. The Queen stopped only a few steps away from them. Her eyes locked on like a blade holding steady above a target. For a long moment, she said nothing. The silence itself felt like punishment. Then, in a voice sharp enough to cut stone, she spoke. "Human, tell me why you stand in a place where even my own generals are forbidden." Swallowed, but he didn't look away. I'm here because Princess Lyra invited me." Lyra's hands trembled. The Queen's expression hardened. A human, in her sacred garden. And her daughter was the reason. The queen felt something deep inside her shift. Fear, not of danger, but of losing her daughter's trust. And that fear was only the beginning. Princess Lyra had never been a girl with many choices. From childhood, every day of her life was shaped by duty, what she should say, how she should walk, how she should breathe when she stood before the Empire. Even her emotions were trained and tightened like armor. She smiled when the council needed comfort. She stood tall when soldiers needed strength. She obeyed every rule her mother placed before her, but was the first person she chose on her own. The first person she spoke to without thinking about the Empire. The first who listened to her like she was not a princess, just a girl. And because of that, she kept him as her small secret until today. When the queen confronted them in the Forbidden Garden, Lyra felt her heart fall into her stomach. Not even in her worst dreams did she imagine facing her mother like this. The queen's presence felt heavy, like a storm sitting above them. Stood silently beside her, unsure whether to move or run. But Lyra stepped forward, voice shaking. "Mother, please, he is not dangerous." The queen's golden eyes flicked toward her. "Not dangerous," she repeated softly, but the softness was more frightening than anger. "You bring a human, a species known for chaos, into our sacred ground, and you expect me to believe he is harmless." Lyra swallowed, yet she refused to bow her head. She could not speak the truth she carried in her heart, because she barely understood it herself. She only knew was different. She felt it the moment she met him. Weeks earlier, after the soldiers retrieved from his ruined ship, Lyra had visited the medical ward out of curiosity. But the first thing she saw was not fear in his eyes. It was loneliness. A deep, human loneliness that made her take a step closer instead of away. She remembered the first words it said to her, voice weak from dehydration. "You don't have to worry, I'm not here to cause trouble." At the time, she thought he was lying, like most humans did. But after days of watching him, speaking to him, slowly trusting him, she realized he truly meant it. He wasn't trying to use her. He wasn't trying to escape the Empire. He wasn't even trying to win her favor. He just wanted someone who would talk to him. Now in the garden, Lyra felt anger mixed with fear. She didn't want to be punished for something she caused. She looked at him, his tired eyes, the way he tried to stand tall even though the queen's gaze terrified him. "Mother," Lyra said again, voice steadier this time, "I asked him to walk with me. I am the one who brought him. If there is blame, it is mine." The queen's expression didn't change, but her heart shook quietly. Her daughter had never spoken like this before. However, could not stay silent. He stepped forward, though his legs trembled. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "it wasn't her fault. She only wanted to show me something beautiful. I didn't touch anything I wasn't allowed to. I didn't mean disrespect." The queen watched him with a cold, sharp intensity. She studied the way he spoke, soft, honest, with no sign of manipulation. But she was not ready to trust. "Humans speak beautifully," she said, "but their history tells a darker story." Lowered his eyes, not because he felt shame from her words, but because he knew they were not entirely wrong. Humans did have a history full of mistakes, but he wasn't here to harm anyone. Lyra gently placed her hand near his, a gesture small but full of courage. "Mother, he is my friend." The word echoed through the garden like thunder. The queen froze. A friend. A human. Her daughter, princess of the Empire, had made a connection with someone the queen viewed as fragile and unpredictable. That was more shocking than seeing him in the garden itself. The queen turned her gaze to her daughter. "Why him?" she asked quietly. "Out of all beings, why him?" Lyra opened her mouth, then closed it. She could not explain the feeling, A quiet warmth carried, his careful way of speaking, his gentle respect even when afraid. She could not explain how he made her feel seen, not just as a princess, but as a person. In the end, she whispered, "Because he listens." His breath caught. The queen's eyes flickered. For the first time, something inside her began to doubt her own certainty. But doubt was dangerous. Doubt was weakness. So she straightened her back and responded coldly. "Then let us test this human's truth. If he is as harmless as you say, the light of judgment will reveal it." Tensed, Lyra's heart skipped. The queen stepped forward, her voice final and sharp. "This conversation is not finished." It was only beginning. The queen's presence in the garden was like a storm settling over calm waters. Her long robes shimmered with silver threads that caught the light of the floating pollen. The guards fell silent behind her, unsure whether to stand firm or step aside. Even the silver flowers seemed to bow slightly under the weight of her gaze. Stood as still as he could, feeling the impossible tension press down on him. He had faced storms in space, pirates, and cosmic radiation, but nothing had prepared him for this. The queen herself, looking at him like she could see every hidden thought in his mind. He tried to straighten his shoulders, tried to show strength he didn't feel, tried to remind himself that he was human, yes, fragile, yes, but alive and determined to survive. The queen's golden eyes flicked to her daughter, Lyra, who had stepped forward to stand beside. Her hands were trembling slightly, but she refused to look away. "Human," the queen began, her voice low and sharp, "you have trespassed into the sacred ground of my empire. You stand beside my daughter. You claim no harm, yet your kind has always brought chaos. Why should I believe your words?" His throat was dry. He swallowed once, twice. "Your Majesty, I do not wish harm. I only wish to speak with Princess Lyra as friends. I have no desire to take anything that is not offered." The queen narrowed her eyes. She could see the truth flickering in him, but she had learned never to trust her eyes alone. Too many creatures in the universe had learned to look honest while hiding the sharpest blades behind their smiles. "You speak of friendship," she said. "Do you even understand the power you are challenging? My empire does not bend for humans. My daughter does not risk herself for strangers lightly. And yet here you are." His hands shook slightly, but he forced himself to look up. I understand, and I am not asking for trust. I only ask for a chance to prove I mean no harm. If it is your command, I will submit to any test you see fit." The queen's gaze sharpened. A challenge, a weakness, a hint of courage, had all three, yet he had no shield but his own honesty. "You will stand beneath the light of judgment," the queen said finally. "It is a sacred test, one of truth and heart. Humans are known for deceit, for hiding intentions. None have passed this test in living memory." Did not hesitate, he nodded slowly. I will." Lyra's hand hovered near his arm. "You don't have to." He looked at her, faint courage shining in his tired eyes. "It's okay. If it shows her, if it helps her trust me, I will do it." The queen turned away briefly, signaling the guards to prepare the ceremonial light. The garden hummed with the quiet energy of the ancient device. The silver flowers dimmed as a pale, shifting sun descended from above, illuminating a small circle on the ground. The light of judgment was not just a machine. It had been attuned to the empire's deepest truths. It could see lies, it could see fear, and it could see the heart. Stepped into the circle. The pale light washed over him, scanning, searching, pulling memories and intentions to the surface. His body trembled as it swept through every hidden corner of his mind. He thought of the abandoned ship, the crew he could not save, the loneliness that had haunted him across the stars. The first time he had met Lyra, her soft voice asking him if he was afraid, her eyes trusting him before anyone else had. The light pulsed, digging deeper. It sensed no malice, No trickery, no betrayal, only honesty, only devotion, only the simple wish to protect someone who had become precious to him. The queen's golden eyes widened. She stepped closer, disbelief creasing her forehead. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "A human with no deceit in his heart." Sneeze almost gave out under the intensity, but Lyra reached forward and took his hand. "See," she whispered softly. "He's not lying, he's true." The queen's breath hitched. Every lesson, every story, every caution about humans screamed in her mind, but here, before her eyes, one human had proven the impossible. One human had shown loyalty, honesty, and courage strong enough to pierce even her ancient skepticism. For the first time in her long life, she felt uncertainty creep in, a sensation almost unfamiliar. Fear of losing control, fear of being wrong, and a quiet spark of something she had not admitted in decades, hope. The light of judgment dimmed, fell to one knee exhausted but alive. He looked up at the queen with quiet determination. Lyra knelt beside him, whispering encouragement. The queen took a deep breath. Something in her shifted. Perhaps it was the first time in centuries that she had seen a human as she had never imagined, brave, honest, and strong in ways that did not match physical power. And for the first time she realized, trust could be earned in ways that history had never predicted. The pale glow of the light of judgment faded slowly, leaving the garden bathed in soft silver light. Knelt in the circle, his chest rising and falling quickly as he tried to steady his trembling body. Lyra stayed beside him, her hand warm around his, her presence like a small shield against the overwhelming tension in the air. Queen did not move immediately. She stood still, her golden eyes sharp, yet something in her chest had loosened. She had witnessed the impossible. The human, fragile, exhausted, and small, had passed the test no one expected him to pass. And in that there was a truth she could no longer deny. For centuries, humans had been stories of caution for her empire. They were clever, yes, but unpredictable. Weak, yes, but dangerous in their own way. They survived through cunning, through luck, and through stubbornness that often bordered on recklessness. And yet here was standing or kneeling, exhausted, but completely honest, completely loyal. The queen exhaled slowly, almost involuntarily. "Stand," she commanded quietly. Obeyed, feeling Lyra's encouraging squeeze of his hand. He rose slowly, every movement careful, like a man balancing against the weight of doubt itself. His legs trembled, but his gaze never wavered. "You have passed the first part of my judgment," the queen said. Her voice was measured, but there was a weight to it, a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. "Humans are known for lies and deception, yet the light shows nothing, no malice, no hidden intentions, only truth, loyalty, and courage." Nodded, he wanted to speak, to say something that could explain himself, but words felt small compared to the enormity of the moment. All he could do was stand there and allow the truth he carried in his heart to speak for him. Lyra's eyes glimmered with tears. "Mother," she whispered, "do you see, he is not dangerous, he is good." The queen's eyes softened, but only slightly. She had ruled for centuries, and in all that time she had rarely been wrong. But here she had been wrong about humans, wrong about this one, wrong about her daughter's judgment. And yet she felt a strange pride stirring within her, not for herself, but for the courage it took for her daughter to see something beyond the fear and rules of the empire. "Very well," she said, her voice stronger now, tinged with authority. "If your words are as true as the light has shown, then you must prove your courage in another way. The fleet has been sighted at the edge of our sector. They are raiders, as ruthless as any human warlord. They will not respect the boundaries of our palace. They will not respect life. If you are truly loyal and true, you will not turn away when the time comes." His heart raced. He had faced pirates before, but never an alien fleet with weapons capable of leveling a city. His body was weary, his wounds from the crash still raw. But he looked at Lyra and the Queen and felt something ignite inside him, a determination far stronger than fear. I will, he said quietly. I don't know if I can fight like your warriors. I don't even know if I can survive, but I will not abandon her. The Queen studied him closely. In every human she had heard of, she would have seen weakness. Here, however, she saw something extraordinary, a willingness to risk everything, not for glory, not for gain, but for someone else. A human who could stand beside her daughter and perhaps even protect her. Lyra pressed closer too, her voice a soft whisper only he could hear. I trust you. That's enough for me. Nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest he had never known. This was not a battlefield. This was not a war. This was a human moment, fragile, honest, and unshakable. The Queen finally turned away, signaling the guards to retreat to their positions. Prepare yourselves, she said, more to herself than anyone else. The test of truth is not over until the storm arrives, and that storm is approaching faster than expected. The garden felt unusually quiet, the silver flowers still trembling from the tension that had passed through it. Stood tall, despite exhaustion, fear, and uncertainty. He had passed the first test, the one that demanded honesty of heart. The second test would demand courage of action. And somewhere deep in his chest, he knew he was ready. Because for the first time in his life, he was not alone. He had someone to fight for. And perhaps for the first time, the impossible felt possible. The first warning came as a distant tremor beneath the palace walls. At first, it was subtle, a faint vibration that whispered through the stone floors. The guards paused, eyes widening, ears straining for more. Then the sensors lit up in the command hall. The fleet had pierced the sector's edge. Queen's sharp eyes narrowed. They move faster than expected, she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. Alert the palace defenses, evacuate civilians, every soldier to their station. Lyra stood frozen, her hand brushing against his arm. Mother, what do we do? She asked, voice barely audible over the alarm sirens. Fear coursed through her like electricity, and she had never been more aware of her own mortality. The Queen turned to her daughter, her gaze steady, calm, and commanding. We fight, she said simply. No hesitation, no doubt, just the cold certainty of a ruler who had faced countless threats before. His heart raced. Battle had never been part of his life, at least not like this. In space, yes, there were skirmishes, pirates, collapsed ships, near-death experiences, but nothing like this. A full alien fleet, armed and merciless, heading straight for the heart of the Empire. You should rest, the Queen said to him, her eyes flicking over his tired form. This is not your fight, human. Shook his head. I won't leave her, he said quietly, voice steady even as his body trembled. I may be weak, I may be far from your strength, but I won't abandon her, not when she's in danger. The Queen's golden eyes widened just slightly. She had expected fear. She had expected hesitation. Instead, she saw something remarkable, loyalty beyond instinct, courage beyond reason. Humans were fragile, yes, but sometimes their hearts were stronger than the strongest armor. Lyra squeezed his hand, feeling the tension in his body. You don't have to do this, she whispered. Please. Shook his head. I choose to, I promised you, I'll keep my word. The first ships broke through the atmosphere, their engines burning violet streaks across the sky. They fired energy bolts at the palace's outer defenses, and explosions rippled through the walls, shaking the ground beneath them. Silver petals from the garden floated in the air, some burning where stray energy beams grazed them. Lyra's eyes widened in horror. The palace she had grown up in, the place she had always thought unshakable, was under attack. Soldiers fought desperately, but they were relentless. Their weapons were advanced, their tactics cruel. A squadron of raiders broke through the courtyard and headed straight for the inner palace, where the princess and her human companion stood. Lyra's pulse raced. She stepped back instinctively, but moved forward. "Stay behind me," he said softly, though his voice carried more certainty than she expected. He was small, fragile, and human, yet somehow he radiated an unshakable resolve. One of the raiders fired a blast aimed directly at Lyra. She froze, time slowed. Every instinct screamed to move, but she was too stunned, too terrified. Then lunged. He threw himself between Lyra and the attack, using his body as a shield. The energy bolt struck him squarely, sending him sprawling across the ground. He grunted in pain, the world tilting around him. Lyra screamed, dropping to her knees beside him. "Stay with me." He coughed, feeling the heat of the burn across his back. His strength wavered, but his gaze found Lyra, and he smiled faintly through the pain. "I told you I wouldn't leave." The Queen arrived at the scene, cutting through the chaos with her regal authority. She dispatched soldiers to fend off the raiders, but her attention remained fixed on her daughter and the human who had dared to stand between her and death. For the first time, she saw the depth of human courage, not the reckless bravery she had expected, but a quiet, unyielding devotion that refused to bend even under pain. Her daughter was alive because of him. Alive because a human, against all odds, had chosen to fight not for glory, not for power, but for loyalty and love. The Queen's chest tightened. She had been wrong about humans. Not all of them were weak, not all of them were dangerous. And now, in the midst of battle, the one human who mattered most to her daughter had proven it. Lyra held his hand tightly, whispering words of comfort while the world erupted around them. For the first time, she felt that trust and love could survive even the most impossible circumstances. Even war, even fear, even pain. And somewhere deep in her heart, the Queen felt a seed of understanding grow. Sometimes the smallest, weakest beings could carry the strongest hearts. The battle was far from over, but in that moment, a human had become more than a visitor in the Empire. He had become a protector. And no one, not even an alien queen, could deny the courage he had shown. The battle had reached the palace's heart. Fire and smoke filled the air, and the once perfect gardens were now with craters and smoldering silver petals. Lyra's breaths came fast and shallow, her eyes darting from the collapsing walls to the human beside her. Had stood through the chaos like a pillar of determination, but now he was the closest thing she had to safety in the midst of destruction. They had broken through the inner defenses. Soldiers were fighting desperately, but the enemy was relentless. The raiders moved with precision, targeting the princess immediately. Lyra's heart raced. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but there was nowhere safe to go. A blast tore through the corridor near them, throwing shards of debris into the air. One shard flew directly toward Lyra, and her scream cut through the smoke. Time slowed. She felt frozen, paralyzed with fear. Then moved. Without hesitation, without a second thought, he hurled himself between Lyra and the incoming shard. The energy blast struck him, sending him sprawling across the floor. Pain tore through his body, and he gasped, his human fragility exposed in a moment of pure bravery. Lyra cried, rushing to his side. She pressed her hands to his chest, checking for injuries she was too afraid to imagine. Tears burned her eyes, but she could not look away. I told you," he whispered, voice strained, shaking, but his eyes locked on hers with unwavering determination. "I wouldn't leave you." The Queen arrived moments later, her presence cutting through the chaos like a blade. She had fought through the palace corridors, dispatching raiders with precise strikes, yet her focus remained on the pair. She froze for a moment, her golden eyes wide. Her daughter, her precious daughter, was safe because of this human. A human, fragile, small, untrained in war, yet unshakably brave. Lyra shook her head, tears spilling freely. Why would you do that? You could have died." Managed a faint, pained smile. Because someone had to keep you alive. Someone had to stand when fear wanted to run. The queen's heart thudded heavily in her chest. She had expected humans to flee when danger struck to protect themselves before others. And yet here was one who had put the life of her daughter above his own. Weak, yes. Fragile, yes. But courageous in a way she had never seen, even among her own elite guards. "Your bravery is unprecedented," the queen said softly, more to herself than to anyone else. Her voice carried a mixture of awe and disbelief. "A human protecting royalty like one of our own." Lyra knelt beside, holding his hand tightly. "I knew you were brave," she said, her voice breaking. "But I never imagined this. Thank you for everything." His chest rose and fell heavily. He could barely speak through the pain, but the warmth in Lyra's eyes and the trust in her voice gave him strength. In that moment, he realized something powerful. Courage was not about size or skill, but about the heart behind the action. The queen finally stepped closer. She crouched slightly, placing her hand gently on his shoulder. It was a gesture she had never extended to a human before, and yet it felt necessary now. "You have shown me something I did not believe possible," she said. "Your courage, your loyalty, it surpasses anything my eyes have witnessed in a lifetime. Perhaps humans are not as weak as history has claimed." Looked at her surprised. Respect, awe, and acknowledgement from a being of such power. It was something he had never expected. His hand tightened around Lyra's reflexively. The sound of the battle faded slightly as soldiers regained control, pushing the remaining forces back. The garden, though and battered, still held its silver glow, flickering faintly like it was celebrating its act of bravery. Lyra looked up at her mother, a mix of relief and pride shining in her eyes. "Mother, he saved me. He risked everything for me." The queen's gaze lingered on. For centuries she had ruled with certainty, guided by history and tradition. Yet now she had learned a new lesson. Sometimes the smallest, most fragile beings could carry the strongest hearts. Let out a shuddering breath. Pain throbbed through his body, but he smiled faintly at Lyra. I promised you," he whispered, "and I meant it." Lyra leaned close, resting her forehead against his. "You kept your promise," she said softly, "and that means more than anything." The queen remained standing a few steps back, her expression unreadable, yet inside, a storm of emotions swirled, astonishment, admiration, and the faintest glimmer of hope. She had thought she understood courage. She had thought she knew what loyalty meant. But now, before her eyes, a human had redefined both. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the aftermath of chaos and war, the human had earned more than survival. He had earned the trust of a princess, and perhaps the beginning of understanding from a queen. And for the first time, felt truly seen, truly valued, not as a weak human, but as someone capable of extraordinary courage. The battle was not yet over, but in that small moment hearts had been won. And sometimes that was stronger than any victory of weapons or power. The battle had ended, but the palace was far from peaceful. Smoke curled from the shattered walls, and the air still carried the faint hum of energy from fallen weapons. Soldiers moved cautiously, checking for survivors, while the queen and Princess Lyra walked slowly through the aftermath, their eyes scanning for any sign of further threat. Sat on the edge of a fractured garden path, his body aching, bruised and burned from the attack. Lyra knelt beside him, holding his hand as gently as if he were made of porcelain. His breaths were slow but uneven, each one a reminder of the price he had paid to keep her safe. The queen watched silently from a few steps away. Her golden eyes, sharp and commanding for centuries, softened as she observed the scene. She had expected to feel anger, disappointment, even fear at a human standing beside her daughter in her sacred garden. Instead, she felt awe. The human, fragile, imperfect, and small, had done what no soldier, no general, no warrior had ever done. He had protected her daughter with nothing but courage and heart. He had risked everything for someone who was not his own. For a long moment the queen could not speak. Her hands rested lightly on the hilt of her ceremonial blade, not as a weapon, but as a reminder of the centuries she had ruled. And now, here was a lesson she had never expected to learn. Strength was not measured only in power or lineage. Sometimes the greatest strength was found in the hearts. Lyra looked up at her mother, tears still shining on her cheeks. "Mother, he saved me," she whispered. "He risked everything, not for glory, not for reward, but for me. You have to see it. He is truly brave." The queen stepped forward, her long robes brushing against the scorched petals of the garden. She knelt slightly, an action she had never performed before for a human. Her hand hovered above, hesitant but purposeful. "You have done what I thought impossible," she said, voice soft but strong. "You have shown loyalty, courage, and honor in ways my empire has never witnessed from your kind. I misjudged you. I misjudged humans." Blinked, surprised by the weight of her words. Respect from the queen was unimaginable. Acceptance even more so. His chest tightened as he realized the enormity of the moment. I only wanted to protect her," he said quietly, his voice hoarse. "I didn't expect this." The queen's golden eyes softened further. "Sometimes the truth is revealed not through power but through choice. You chose to protect even when fear could have ruled. You chose courage even when weakness was obvious. That is strength." Lyra reached forward and leaned against, resting her forehead lightly against his shoulder. "Mother, see him, truly see him, not as a human, not as a stranger, but as someone who has earned our trust, our respect, and my heart." The queen's gaze lingered on her daughter, then returned too. For the first time in centuries, she felt a sense of peace that had nothing to do with empire or duty. She felt understanding, acceptance, perhaps even hope. "You have earned your place here," she said finally, voice clear and unwavering. "Not just beside my daughter, but in this empire, if you choose it. You have proven that even the smallest, weakest-seeming beings can carry hearts stronger than any blade or shield." Lips curved into a weak but genuine smile. Relief, exhaustion, and pride mingled in him. For so long he had felt adrift in the universe, a stranger among strangers, surviving by chance and luck. And now he felt rooted, anchored, valued. Lyra's eyes sparkled with unshed tears. "Thank you," she whispered, voice trembling. "Thank you for staying, thank you for being brave." The queen stepped back, straightening her posture with the grace and authority she had always carried. She looked at one last time, her expression unreadable but her heart heavy with new understanding. "You have not only saved my daughter, human, you have changed the way I see our world. Perhaps one day we will see more like you. Brave, true, loyal." Exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of exhaustion finally give way to something lighter. He had fought, survived, and protected. But more than that, he had earned trust and respect across worlds, from a princess and her queen. Lyra squeezed his hand one final time, smiling through tears. "You are home now," she whispered. And for the first time in his life, truly believed it. He was home. The queen watched the two of them for a long moment, then turned her gaze to the skis where the last ships had been driven away. A new understanding settled within her. Trust, courage, and love could cross the boundaries of species. Sometimes the heart alone was the strongest weapon of all. And in the palace gardens, battered but alive, a fragile human had proven that even in a universe of power and fear, the smallest heart could shine. The battle was over. The empire would rebuild, but one truth would remain forever. Humans could be more than legends of weakness. They could be heroes. And this human, this one human, had become more than anyone could have imagined.